Jesus speaks of fire, division. What's going on? He clearly is talking about some difficult things that he's been looking forward to, it seems, which is kind of strange. But you and I are quite acquainted with the fire and division in our world. And by fire, he means destructive fire. I have come to set the earth on fire. He says, there's a baptism which I must be baptized, which is his way of referring to his death. Death on the cross. And he says, how great is my anguish until it's accomplished. Jesus, you're suffering because you want to suffer? Well, anyways, he names the tension, the destruction, and division that we experience. So one, there's some level of encouragement insofar as at least God knows that there's destruction, knows that there's evil in this world. And I want to bring just to light, there's one virtue that comes to my mind as pretty central. If we're not to lose hope and faith in the midst of division and conflict, the one virtue that we might want to think about today is the virtue of fortitude. The virtue of fortitude is the virtue that curbs fear, that doesn't allow fear to keep me from doing the good that I know. And it also moderates my daring, my it's to moderate the recklessness. The virtue of fortitude is between being overwhelmed by fear and being reckless, daring to the point of being reckless. Fortitude. Jesus uses the image of fire. So what comes to my mind is a forest fire that I was in the middle of once. I had gone to a scout camp in California, and we had just arrived. We took a bus load of scouts all the way to Southern California. We're unloading. I'm super excited because we only go to this camp in California every other year, and this was my first time. It's supposed to be a much better camp than the camps in Arizona. So there's all this excitement. We unload our stuff, we put our bags in our tents. They have us do a bunch of tests before the week of camp gets going. And one of the tests is swimming test. They throw us into this freezing cold lake, and we have to swim a number of laps just to make sure that we know what we're doing, that we know how to handle the water. Anyways, we've done all these things. We've showered after the being in the lake. And then I remember this guy comes running into camp screaming, there's a fire, there's a fire. And he just kind of runs right past our camp and goes off to the headquarters. And I just kind of watch him go, and is this for real? Well, probably less than 2 hours later, everyone has evacuated the camp except us. Because we come from Arizona, we don't have our own car. The bus is gone. We were supposed to be at this camp for a whole week. So we have no means of getting back. And I distinctly remember the fire was pretty close. So very soon, by the time we're lining up with all of the staff of the camp, ash and smoke has covered the sun, so that the sun looked like a little red moon. It was dark. It was eerie. Forest fires are really frightening things, and people have lost lives and homes. Forest fires are something we're acquainted with here in Arizona and California. But to my surprise, the California Department of Forestry and Fire Prevention speaks of several benefits of fire. Which, okay, so if Jesus is talking about wanting to set the world afire, maybe it'd be interesting to consider what are the benefits to natural fire. California Department of Forestry says that fire can cleanse the forest floor from debris and stuff that could risk more destructive fires. So like they do controlled fires to clear out the forest floor. Fire can provide better habitat, because when there's a lot of brush, a lot of the undergrowth, it can suck up water that other creatures need. Fire can kill disease. And it has this interesting statistic that more trees die by disease than by fires. So the fire can actually, they do controlled burns to burn up some of the diseases that attack the plants, the vegetation, the animals. And these fires can bring about new generations. There are certain trees that have fireproof bark, and they're made for that intense heat to withstand it, but it's only with that intense heat that they can expand and release their seeds. Strange. That something so evil and destructive, under certain parameters, can be very beneficial. Jesus speaks of a fire that he is very well aware of, that he knows is coming. He speaks of division that he knows is coming between father and mother, and he's really specific. Like the most uncomfortable division that exists is within loved ones, and he's very specific. Father, son, mother, daughter, daughter-in-law, mother-in-law, back and forth, both ways. So could there be in the mystery of Christ some benefit? If God permits it, the answer is yes. God would never permit an evil that he couldn't bring good out of. Does that mean that all evil, like every form of division, is good? No. No, all form of division is bad. Fire is destructive. But in God's gift of redemption, he can bring about something good. What that good is, it's hard for us to know this side of heaven. But the gift of fortitude, the virtue, can help us persevere in the midst of these conflicts that we live in. Fortitude, again, is to curb fear, to not let fear dominate my decisions. This is really important. We have to actively consider how many fears have I allowed to dictate my choices. And to ask Jesus, free me from those fears. If you've ever been angry, if you've exploded with the fire of anger or frustration at another person, have you pondered that anger is always rooted in a fear? I think of the things that my dad would get so angry about, these little things. I'm sorry, Dad. I speak so bad about you sometimes. You're a great dad, wherever you are. He's probably listening. Anyways, he would get so angry about if I slammed the door. Why was he so angry? Because he was afraid that I'd break this door and he'd have to pay money to have to fix it. We burst out in anger when we're concerned, when we're fearful. We get angry at our spouses because we're fearful that they're going to make a bad decision for the kids, a bad decision for our relationship, for our finances. There's usually a fear underlying our anger. It's good to think about that, to ponder. Jesus, shine light. What are my fears? Especially, what are the fears that keep me from being charitable, loving, and kind in my speech? What are the fears that keep me from living in your joy in the midst of division? Fear gets in the way, but Jesus can shine light into that. St. Paul in the second reading says, "Consider how Jesus endured such opposition from sinners." He endured the injustices that were leveled against him, in order that you may not grow weary and lose heart. Who's the one who doesn't let fear get in the way? It's Jesus. Jesus did not let fear of his suffering get in the way. Did he fear the cross? Was Jesus afraid? Yes. The Garden of Gethsemane. He wept. He was fearful. He was sweating. So intense was his anxiety that he sweat blood, the scriptures say. So friends, do not think that your fear means that you have no faith. But fortitude is to not let the fears make you make bad decisions. Do not let fear make you angry or resentful. Do not let fear get in the way of charity. Fear influences chastity. People act out in lust because of their fears and anxieties all the time. Fear is so influential to make us choose the wrong. Ask Jesus to, 1, reveal your fears, and 2, to help you receive the gift of fortitude and practice the virtue of fortitude, to choose the good despite your fears. Consider how Jesus endured such opposition from sinners in order that you and I may not grow weary and lose heart. He, Jesus, endured the cross, despising its shame, for the sake of the joy that lay before him. I used to go running with my first pastor. My first assignment was at St. Thomas Aquinas in Avondale with Father John Muir. And I remember one time going for a run, and he's an energetic guy, and he's talking. Here we are running, and he's chatting. Okay, I'm like huffing and puffing. Why are you talking to me right now? But I remember he was telling me how he used to run track and field, and his coach would tell him, do not look down. When you're running, you're tempted to watch every step. You're tempted to be a little fearful. But when your head is downwards, 1, you're restricting your airflow, which means that less oxygen is getting to your muscles, which means you're going to get sore and tired more quickly. So the coach said, you got to look up. You got to keep your eyes on where you're going. That will keep your posture straight, your airflow better. You're going to have more endurance. Brothers and sisters, we will experience more fortitude in the midst of division and conflict if we keep our eyes on Jesus. That's what St. Paul says. Keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus. Jesus, he says, is the leader and the perfecter of our faith. He can help us grow in fortitude in the midst of fear. But fortitude is not just being bold and daring and not caring about what might be dangerous. Fear can be good. Fear can protect you from doing something that's going to cause harm. Being fearless, Thomas Aquinas talks about, when he's explaining fortitude, he says that fearlessness, having no fear, is a bad thing. That's not fortitude. It's called, a fancy word, stupidity. And being daring and reckless might look brave, but it must be discerning. We must moderate we have a desire. Everybody has a desire to be bold, to not let fear get in the way. We want to be courageous in the face of struggle, but we have to be discerning. Fortitude helps us discern, to moderate our daring. What's actually best for my soul? Because, brothers and sisters, Jesus has allowed division and conflict. He's allowing a fire to burn in this world because he can bring about good. So we shouldn't be fearful. God can bring out good out of everything. And we shouldn't be reckless, because some of the things that happen we have to allow. If Jesus allows it, we must allow some things too. Confident that he's at work here. Fortitude keeps us going forward, to choose the good that we know in our minds and our hearts, to not stop being charitable, loving, kind, to not lose faith, hope, charity towards God, to love our neighbors as ourselves, to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us. Oh my gosh, we lack that tremendously. I lack that tremendously. Fortitude helps us stay on that course, despite fears and our desire to be daring and reckless. Staying in that healthy place where, yes, we're afraid, but we've put on the virtues of Jesus. Jesus is the leader and the perfecter of our faith. He's the only one who is perfectly fortuitous. He is the one who exemplifies and lives fortitude, and we can put on his fortitude. Just like in order to love my enemies, I can't do that. In order to do that, I have to say, Jesus, give me all of your love for this person. And he will. His love in us. Fortitude. Lord, I'm tempted towards fear. I'm tempted to be reckless. Give me your fortitude. Fill me with your fortitude, that it might be you that keeps me on track in the midst of the fire and division. And he will do so. And that allows us to be free, to be joyful even in the midst of terrible evils, in the midst of uncertainties, etc. The Lord is eager to see this fire because he's going to bring out benefits. And that's up to him to really know what that's about. We must lean into that mystery, trusting. Jesus, help me to trust you, that you can bring good out of all evil. Help me to trust you and to play my part, discerning your will for me.